Our next speaker is going to continue our tradition of having a female, but more important, is going to really start addressing some of the ecosystem issues that we've been talking about the last 2 days. Sandy touched on some of that stuff, and our next speaker, Esmeralda Swartz from Ericsson, is also going to discuss it in detail. And the title of her talk is going to be about converting ego systems into ecosystems. I can't wait to hear what she has to say. Esmeralda.
Thank you, Roger.
See you.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be back. I feel like I'm a natural on this stage. I was just at the CloudEXPO in New York in June and was really reflecting what's actually been happening in the market and all the changes, both personally as well as what's happening in the marketplace, which is a great segue into this presentation. So for those of you that may not be familiar with Ericsson, we are a global communications provider. Our job is to connect everyone and everything around the world and then support that with software and hardware and services to take advantage of that connectivity. In September of last year, Ericsson acquired a company out of Boston called Metrotech. And Metrotech is a monetization provider, and that's where I came from. And we've been working a lot with Ericsson on different verticals that are really beginning to take advantage of IoT in a big way. So I thought I would focus the presentation on taking you through a journey with some of our customers and what they're beginning to do in terms of taking advantage of IoT, but more from a global marketplace and what that means from a business model perspective. This is always a good starting point to ground really where we are. And I was reflecting on just how much change is actually occurring in the market. If you think about every major evolution or revolution that's occurred as a result of bringing connectivity to places and people, the pace that this is happening now with mobility is unlike anything that we've seen. And you now have the ability to connect to anyone or anything through a mobile platform, and that's having a profound impact on the types of services and applications that you can take advantage of. And the inflection point, I think many of you have seen this quote from Mark Andreessen, where he talked about software is eating the world. This is from 2011. And I thought it was interesting that just recently, one of his partners talked about mobile is eating the world. And why this is an interesting inflection point is that it's the ability to connect to anything and everyone through a mobile platform that provides the ability to bring new applications and services to market, which of course is what IoT is all about. And who can forget this? This is really the quintessential quote on what it takes to actually drive to a customer-centric value and how products that really resonate in the marketplace with your customers. And why it's actually interesting to bring up in the context of IoT is that we now have something else that's at our disposal that really changes the user experience through the ability to connect with people through that mobile platform. So of course hardware is important, the operating system is important, applications are important, and the network is important. But how do you really personalize those interactions with your customers? It's the ability to think about the types of applications that you can make available and the data that you can make available and connect in a very contextual way with that digital citizen through a mobile device. And it's that ability to really translate that user experience in a very personal way that's really going to usher in the next evolution in the IoT market that we're all here to learn more about. So the industry landscape, and this is true of pretty much every industry that we're involved in, whether it's the industrial internet or smart cities or connected car, we are absolutely evolving with the advent of cloud, all of the sensor technology and IoT and software, where we are now at the point of moving and evolving from purchasing a product to subscribing to a service. And this has dramatic implications then on what needs to happen behind the scenes for businesses to take advantage of this phenomenon. Services can be transient. Partnerships can last as long as needed for the life of a service. You have services that are increasingly being composed and decomposed on the fly, and it's your ability to participate in this type of environment through a marketplace that's going to make IoT and cloud really an enabler for you to transform the way that you do business and resulting revenue streams that you perhaps didn't have an opportunity to think about before. Globalization, so that ubiquitous global connectivity and the ability to support a global enterprise and be able to connect through partnerships to provide that type of offering is really critical when you start thinking about marketplaces and IoT and cloud. I think we all agree that we really do need to evolve as an industry and put the interconnectivity in IoT. You still have today a lot of stovepipe-type solutions. It's been devices and connectivity. A lot of the initial applications for IoT were about cost savings. And of course that's really important, but really the opportunity is what happens when you start to be able to participate in a marketplace-like environment and drive applications and new services and support an ecosystem concept. So it's all about innovation. It's about open APIs. It's about making it easy for developers to develop interesting new applications that contribute to the value of that marketplace. It's about having the automation to be able to scale and be able to move very agilely into any new environment and to support any type of business model. And it's about ecosystem partnering. IoT, in order for it to realize its potential, really needs to be about enabling and supporting an ecosystem that drives additional value for the business that's providing that service. As any big industry transformation, you're really dealing with fail-fast business models. So it's a nascent industry. Many of the customers that we talk to are really trying to figure out what are those business models? Where should I start? Where am I going to be in 6 months? What do I focus on in a year? And they need to be able to react very quickly because there's going to be a lot of experimentation that goes on. You're going to be launching a new service, a new product into the marketplace. You're going to be looking at what partnerships are required to enable you to be successful. And you need to be able to respond very fast and have that iterative process that allows you to learn from what is happening in the market, how your products are actually being received, and then make those changes very quickly. You need to be able to provide access to data in a very stakeholder-driven fashion. You need to be able to tell the product management team, how are these new products doing in the market? The CFO is going to be interested in what's the churn for my customers. The operations team has a completely different set of requirements. So that ability to visually represent what's actually going on in the uptake of products and services in the market is really critical. You need to be able to configure and make those changes, again, as you learn from what's resonating. And you need to be able to empower the product teams to innovate. Software, in many cases, can be an inhibitor for product teams that are trying to launch a new offering and can't do it because of the inability of the software to support that particular business model. These are some of the industries that Ericsson's actually involved in, and they're all obviously have a big play in terms of IoT, ranging from smart grid to smart utilities, transport ranging from connected vessels, connected vehicles, and I'll go through actual examples of customers that we have in many of these industries, and hopefully it'll provide a good view of what we're seeing and that could be taken to the broader market. Smart cities, public health. We actually have 3 smart city implementations that really provide a view on what is possible when you start connecting sensors in just about any city layer infrastructure and what can be made possible in terms of those new services that are important for both digital citizens as well as digital enterprises. So I'll start off by looking at what a connected digital ecosystem may look like. And this is an example of a connected car ecosystem. But it's really applicable to a broad set of industries and companies that are trying to figure out how they get into the IoT market. And this is really the point around how do we as an industry, take advantage of the fast pace of change that's occurring as we have all of this ubiquitous connectivity and as we start thinking about the types of applications and services that can connect people and things in a much more fluid way. You look at all of the potential around that connected car ecosystem in terms of the potential for data to be utilized by the OEM or in this case, the car manufacturer, and being able to, for example, think about selling data as a service to an insurance company. You start seeing some interesting new models in terms of usage-based insurance based on how someone is driving, the information that can be made to a fleet operator. We're well beyond at this point of just having the services that you would expect in a connected car in terms of integrated infotainment. We've now moved to the point where you have the ability of using that data for safety and route management, but increasingly it's about what can I take as data streams from my connected car and make that available to stakeholders in that ecosystem, and how do I get additional recurring revenue from that data, and how do I support the settlement across that ecosystem of money due all of the parties involved in that transaction. This is an example of Volvo, which is one of our connected car customers. We've been live with them since 2013. They have 500,000 plus cars at this point that are connected. Just to give you an interesting data point, the latest projections for connected cars is that by 2020, there will be 230 million connected cars driving around. And that's a phenomenal opportunity if you think about the types of services that can be sold to both the car owner as well as other stakeholders in the connected car ecosystem. This Volvo connected car is available in 160 markets. We've actually been recognized jointly with Volvo with over 15 industry awards. And what we're working on is what are those other services that can be derived as a result of this connectivity and as a result of having this ecosystem begin to take shape. And so the evolution that we saw with connected car, but really it's applicable to a broad set of industries. And I apologize. I think they translated it into the Apple, and it changed the fonts on me. So that's an Apple problem. But the evolution that we see is basically, moving from M to M. So we had the initial insertion, which was device-driven, the telematics type of application. We started moving into an ecosystem, and that was about, what can I do now in terms of connecting the car to support infotainment type services, safety, software updates, etc. And now we're at this interesting inflection point where it's now innovation driven. So all of our customers that are playing in the IoT space are really looking at what can I do to support developers building applications that are going to make that personalization to my customer really focus on that. And so a lot of what we're seeing is looking outside of the box and looking at auxiliary services that you might not associate at first blush with a given vertical. One of the more interesting ones that Volvo has brought to market was a pilot that they launched actually on a pretty wide scale, where they are using the connected car to support a new business model, which is delivery of groceries and packages to your car. So if you think about the number of times that you have to be concerned about both someone delivering something to your home and the homeowner having to be home to collect that delivery, and the amount of times that sometimes they have to make all of those trips, this is basically your car can be at work, and can be a parking garage or anywhere that you happen to be located, and they will find your car and they will deliver the groceries to your car. They get a one-time key that's good for that particular transaction. And it's an interesting example of what is possible when you have the ability to connect to a user through a connected thing and all the possible services that are now available. This is an example in the shipping industry. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Maersk. They're actually one of the largest shipping container companies in the world. They support over 3 million containers shipped worldwide, and they're actually using IoT to really impact every aspect of their business. So let's look at what some of those possible applications are. So goods management. It's really critical from the moment that you have a shipment leave the dock or the port to when it's arriving at its location. So the goods tracking, having sensors in all those containers, has a huge impact on your ability to understand what's going on with the goods that are in those containers, but also think about the application of being able to provide data to those customers on exactly where they are at all times. So there's no longer this, I don't know when my car is going to arrive. Route management is another big area. Being able to support real-time tracking, planning, optimization. So think about some parts of the world where there's not necessarily the safest conditions, so huge application there. Safety and security. Crew welfare, so remote healthcare, all the personal information management, being able to provide that voice, SMS, internet access to crew members, vessel O&M, remote fault resolution, engine performance indicators, and this is just in the context of a connected vessel. And what we see is increasingly in every single industry, the same ecosystem of beginning to be put in place that allows for very interesting new services as well as very dramatic efficiency gains from an operational perspective. This is what the maritime ecosystem looks like in the context of a connected vessel. We showed earlier what a connected car ecosystem, but you see the same pattern. There are many stakeholders involved in that ecosystem, and they all have a different view and a different desire to access data that's going to be important to them. And you need to be able to satisfy all of these stakeholders. And you have different partners that are involved in supporting this type of ecosystem. And I'll go through and show you for these different industries what those partner-oriented solutions are that allow this to be a reality. This is one of my favorites. I love this one. It's you think about IoT and you think about what is the impact, and we all hear about connected car, we all hear about smart cities, and and some other industries that are front and center in the media. But this one I really love because it's a perfect example of the impact on IoT on a traditional business, right? Vintners have been making wine for generations. And this was an example that I really loved because it was tying IoT into a business that really is very focused on yield, crop optimization, and how do you use IoT to really transform a very traditional business. This particular vineyard, we have 4 vineyards in Germany, and they're connected with basically sensors on the vines, measuring air humidity and temperature, soil humidity and temperature, solar intensity. And that has some dramatic implications from a business perspective. So these are all results that impact a business. So you have maximized output. You now have the ability to predict the optimum time for harvest. Certainly there's an art to harvesting grapes for wine production, but you now have removed the human element to the point where technology is enabling the vintner to really optimize and impact the way that they're supporting their business. So you're improving the quality, minimizing the risks for grapes. You have increased yield. You actually have data that's being collected that allows the vintners to make more informed decisions about harvest time. You have the ability to precisely define the optimal time, the optimum depth for fertilizers. What do I need to do to optimize from an irrigation perspective? Fungicides. You now have the ability to remotely monitor thousands and thousands of acres through a mobile app. And you have now the ability for a winemaker to have data across the entire operation on how the harvest is progressing and how they need to react if there's a change in the environment. And think about this from the application of what could be done for smart agriculture. And you're seeing that this same impact in the vineyard scenario is also very applicable to what starts to happen when you have sensor technology deployed ubiquitously on basically everything to improve the yield for crops. And think about the impact on society. The UN had a stat that they released not too long ago that said to support a global population growth of 9 billion, that the world would need to improve food production by 60%. So this is an interesting application of IoT and the broader impact on society at large, and what we need to do as a global society to deal with things like overpopulation and supporting the need to have increased food supplies. So this is really the connected vineyard partner ecosystem. So we're providing connectivity management as a service through our device connection platform. We also have a security service. We have Intel that actually worked on a chipset. Also a 3GPP modem, Telenor on the operator side, MyOmega, and Tracovino, which is actually a vineyard application that allows some of these new models. This is another example. In this case, it's really a smart city. It's Stockholm Royal Seaport. And this is a growing concern for governments, I would say urban dwellers, and pretty much anyone that's living in an urban environment. How do you start to deal with the impact of urbanization and the growing population growth in our urban cities? And a lot of what's happening is, how do I start to use smart technologies and smart sensors deployed across all of the various city layers to improve the quality of life of urban dwellers as well as the quality of life of visitors coming into the city. We have other smart city projects that we're dealing with upgrading all of the infrastructure and then enabling that new infrastructure with sensors to really completely transform the smart city experience. In this case, this is a new urban neighborhood where a lot of the application is around a showcase for what is possible in the smart city of the future. So there's 10,000 new apartments, 30,000 new workplaces, and we're partnering with the partners that I show here to really look at what we can do from a smart grid, smart meter, smart utility type of transformation to allow for demand response programs for smart appliances, smart metering, electric vehicles, microgeneration. So this is really serving as a great pilot for what is possible when you start looking at the urban planning and the impact of technology on ordinary digital citizens, and then the impact that has on municipalities or city governments that have to deal with this influx of population into these cities. This is an example in a smart event. This was actually a Nordic ski race called Fallon, and it's an arena event. And if you look at just the impact in terms of the number of data points that you can, or the number of input data that can be provided to completely transform the experience of an ordinary digital citizen that's looking to have a phenomenal experience at an event, it's actually staggering if you think about the ability to personalize and have context applied to people attending these types of events. So everything from live data that's coming from the event, the ability to really manage the entire experience on site for tickets, program guides, interviews, etc., TV feeds, the impact in terms of business models associated with connecting sponsors, viewers on the site, viewers off-site, media broadcasters, again, an ecosystem. And this is from a visualization and personalization aspect. The new reality is that you really need to be able to connect in a digital way, in a very UX-centric way with your audience, whether that's a business or whether that's an ordinary digital citizen. So that new experience is about what can I provide and how do I apply context to the service or the data that's being made available to a consumer of that data. And this is an example of, again, ecosystem partners. No one can do it alone. So it's important that when you're looking at these different industries, what can be done? Who are the other parties that need to be involved in supporting that creation of value, or those applications and those services to bring value to the ordinary citizen or to stakeholders that are interested in that service? So I would say that, and I've said this before, that the future for IoT is actually data-driven. It's going to be contextual, even though today we are focused still as an industry on what can I derive from an OpEx perspective. So if you look at industrial internet, oil and gas companies or shipping companies, fuel efficiency, those are all wonderful applications. But the real potential for IoT is when you begin to marry all these ubiquitous sensors deployed on pretty much anything that you can imagine, and what can be done now to develop that ecosystem and really have a partner-friendly platform or developer-friendly platform that is going to allow for those innovative new applications that are possible as a result of all of this data that's ubiquitously deployed. And so it's the next phase and the phase that we're at now, and hopefully you saw some of those new applications and new services, is really the next stage. We're beginning to see some of the business models that are possible, some of the use cases that are possible. And what you see is a common pattern across all of these industries. So you need, of course, to have the domain knowledge or the expertise to understand what's important to specific verticals. But you see that common pattern of it's really about value creation. It's not about the devices. The devices are a given. The connectivity is a given. It's how do you add value once those are deployed. We're also getting to the point where people are going to want to pay per outcome. So this is really the interesting intersection of you now have all of this data that's available. And we have already seen the pattern of what happens when there's too much data and you haven't put it into the context that's useful to the user. So big data is a really good example of that. If you think about a typical device, it's collecting 150,000 data points per minute. That's a lot of data. So how do we really take that and ensure that we're not inundating people or businesses or government with data that's really not that useful? So it needs to be contextualized for them to be willing to acquire it. And I believe that what you see with IoT, and hopefully what you saw in some of the ecosystem examples that I went through in these industries, is that you're also starting to see cross-pollination where it's no longer a vertical that's a silo vertical. There's impact and cross-pollination that's occurring across and between different vertical industries. So it's important that you have the ability to have a horizontal data platform that's actually able to capture the value as a result of being able to connect all of these different users and different constituents across that massive ecosystem. Okay, so I have 12 minutes, so I maybe open it up for questions. Can't really see. I usually leave it right up to the last 30 seconds, but yeah.
We're not set up good for questions from the audience, but we do have some time. So Esmeralda, why don't you, if you just go to the side, anyone please come up and talk to her about anything you'd like to talk about. The exhibit floor is going to open up in a few minutes, but we do have some time, so please address your questions directly to her. I'm sure she'll be glad to answer any and everything you can hit. It was good to see the Volvo car there.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
I know how much you love Volvo car and their drivers.
Can't wait till we see millions and millions of them on the road. So thank you very much for your presentation. Please approach her afterwards directly. Exhibit floor is opening soon. And then please return here at 12 o'clock. We're going to have a deep dive into DevOps with Yasef Igal from Logs.io. And then the long-awaited DevOps Power Panel, which will be headed by Andy Mann and have a lot of great people on it. Thank you very much for attending.